All right, you sick fucks. Welcome back to another deep dive. We're about to go full-on savage mode into the story of Breonna Taylor,
Damn.
EMT
Oh.
who got blasted by the cops in her own crib.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that shit was straight up tragic and ignited a whole movement.
Yeah, it's a case that really exposes the cracks in the system, the casual brutality.
No fucking kidding. We're talking 2020. Everyone's losing their shit over trigger-happy cops.
Yeah.
And bam, this happens.
Right.
It poured gasoline on the fire that was the Black Lives Matter movement.
Rightfully so. Breonna's death became a symbol of the violence Black people, especially Black women, face.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit.
Yeah.
Breonna was born in Michigan,
Yeah.
later moved to Kentucky, top of her class, loved math, dreamt of being a neonatal nurse.
Wow.
Seems like she had her shit together.
Yeah, absolutely. A woman with dreams and a future working as an EMT, an essential worker, no less.
Right.
Then it's all snatched away in a hail of bullets.
32 fucking bullets. Let's break down that night.
Yeah.
March 13, 2020. Breonna's chilling with her boyfriend, watching movies. Then what?
Plainclothes officers barge in with a battering ram. They had a no-knock warrant. Can you imagine the terror?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Her boyfriend, thinking it's a home invasion, fires a warning shot, and the cops respond like it's fucking Nam.
Yeah, there are conflicting stories. Cops claim they announced themselves, but her boyfriend says they didn't, and get this. No drugs were ever found.
What?
The warrant was based on weak-ass evidence linking Breonna's ex to drug dealing.
So they basically stormed into this woman's home on a hunch and ended up killing her.
It's a prime example of why no-knock warrants are so dangerous. They put innocent lives at risk with this gung-ho approach to policing.
What the fuck happened next? The city went batshit crazy, right?
Yeah, people were pissed, and for good reason.
Yeah.
No charges against the officers. It was another Black life taken with zero accountability.
They threw a $12 million settlement at the family. Like, that brings Breonna back.
Right, a hollow gesture. It doesn't address the core issue. The system failed Breonna.
Did those cops get off scot-free?
Not entirely. One officer, Brett Hankison, got charged with wanton endangerment for shooting into a neighbor's apartment, but was acquitted.
What?
The others were fired, but only faced federal charges for civil rights violations and falsifying the warrant years later.
So justice delayed, justice denied Breonna's death became a rallying cry.
Her name became synonymous with the fight for police reform and racial justice.
Which brings us to the hashtag Say Her Name movement.
It shines a light on the often forgotten victims of police brutality. Black women, their stories are often ignored, and their deaths don't get the same attention.
Breonna's story wouldn't be silenced. It was everywhere. WNBA players rocking her name on their jerseys, NBA stars dedicating games to her, that powerful-ass portrait by Amy Sherald.
It shows the power of collective grief and anger. Breonna's story resonated, mobilizing athletes, artists, and everyday people demanding change.
So we've got this young woman with a bright future gunned down in her own damn home. Cops? Get away with the slap on the wrist. The city's burning. Let's dive deeper into the chaotic raid and what went down that night after this.
All right, so let's rewind back to that night.
Okay.
Past midnight, March 13th, 2020,
Right.
Breonna and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, are asleep in their apartment. Suddenly, they hear this loud banging on the door.
I'd probably shit myself. What the hell happens next?
It's a total nightmare scenario. You have multiple plainclothes officers, no clear identification, using a battering ram to bust down the door. Walker thought it was a home invasion. It's not surprising.
Wait, so these cops weren't even in uniform?
Exactly.
Talk about a recipe for disaster.
And according to Walker, they didn't even announce they were police. He grabs his legally owned gun and fires a warning shot as the door is being forced open.
Man, can you imagine the adrenaline?
Oh, yeah.
It's dark, you're half asleep, and someone's breaking into your house.
Absolutely. And tragically, it all went to hell. The officers respond to Walker's single shot with a barrage of gunfire. 32 shots fired into the apartment.
32 shots. They unloaded their entire fucking magazines. Were they trying to take out John Rambo or something?
It's a clear example of excessive force. And in the middle of all this chaos, Breonna, unarmed and caught in the crossfire, is hit multiple times. She dies from her injuries.
This is where I get fucking pissed. They went in looking for drugs and found nothing. They turned this woman's home into a war zone and took her life for absolutely no reason.
It's tragic. A prime example of this shoot first, ask questions later mentality that plagues so many police departments. It's a complete disregard for human life.
So the raid goes down and the city explodes. Riots, protests. Breonna's name is everywhere. What happens on the legal side of things?
Initially, not much. The Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron presents the case to a grand jury, but they only indict one officer, Brett Hankison, and only for wanton endangerment for firing into a neighboring apartment.
They didn't charge anyone for shooting Breonna. What a fucking joke.
The grand jury's decision triggered even more outrage and protests. People were furious that the officers who fired the fatal shots walked free.
The system is rigged.
This case threw fuel on the Black Lives Matter movement. People were demanding justice for Breonna and demanding an end to police brutality and this culture of impunity.
What about the other officers in the raid? Did they just go back to patrol?
Not exactly. Jonathan Mattingly, the officer shot in the leg by Walker, retired Miles Cosgrove, who the FBI says fired the fatal shot, was fired.
So they lost their jobs, but that's it. No criminal charges for killing an innocent woman.
Unfortunately, that was the situation for a while. But in 2022, the Department of Justice finally stepped in and filed federal charges against Hankerson Cosgrove and Joshua Janes, the detective who got the warrant.
About damn time. What were the charges?
Hankerson got hit with 2 counts of deprivation of rights under color of law for using excessive force. Cosgrove and Janes were charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice for falsifying information on the warrant application.
So they lied to get the warrant and then tried to cover their asses.
Classic. Exactly. The federal charges were a big deal. It showed that the initial investigation and lack of state charges were bullshit.
Was anyone actually convicted?
Hankerson was found guilty on the federal charges in 2024 and is waiting to be sentenced. Cosgrove and Janes, the other cases, were dismissed by a federal judge. He ruled that Breonna's death was a result of Walker's shooting when officers entered the apartment.
Are you serious? It's the boyfriend's fault that Breonna's dead.
It was a controversial ruling. Many see it as the justice system failing to hold police accountable.
It's a slap in the face to Breonna's family and everyone fighting for justice.
This case shows how messed up the legal system is. It's difficult to prosecute police officers, and victims of police violence face an uphill battle.
It's bleak, man. But didn't something good come out of this whole shit show?
Absolutely. Breonna's death might have been a devastating loss, but it sparked a movement that led to some real changes.
Like Breonna's Law. What's that about?
In April 2021, the Kentucky governor signed Breonna's Law, which banned no-knock warrants statewide. It was a direct response to her death and a recognition of how dangerous these warrants are.
So at least in Kentucky, cops can't just bust down doors in the middle of the night anymore. That's going to count for something, right?
It's a step in the right direction. Similar laws have passed in other states, and there's a growing national movement to ban no-knock warrants entirely.
Good riddance. Those things are terrifying.
They're a violation of our basic rights, the sanctity of our homes, and they disproportionately impact minority communities.
What else came out of Breonna's case? It was a huge deal for the Black Lives Matter movement, right?
Breonna's death energized the movement. It became a symbol of the need for police reform and racial justice. It amplified the message that Black Lives Matter and brought renewed attention to systemic racism and inequality.
It wasn't just activists either. It felt like everyone was talking about Breonna.
Right. Breonna's story went beyond activism. It sparked conversations everywhere, even globally.
I remember seeing her face everywhere. On murals, T-shirts, even on NBA players' shoes.
Yeah.
It was powerful.
Breonna's story became a rallying cry for justice, a reminder that we have to fight for a world where Black lives are valued and protected.
We've covered a lot of heavy shit, the raid, the legal battles, the impact of Breonna's case. We need to talk about the Say Her Name movement and how her story has been honored. So we talked about the Say Her Name movement, right?
Yeah, we got to dig into that.
It's about shining a light on the victims we don't hear about, you know?
It is. It's about those Black women who get killed by the cops and no one bats an eye.
The ones the media doesn't give a shit about.
Exactly. The cases that don't go viral. Breonna's case became a symbol for that movement for a reason.
So how else did her story echo through the world?
Oh, man, it went way beyond the courtroom. The WNBA dedicated their whole season to Breonna in 2020. Players were rocking her name on their jerseys.
That's pretty powerful. What about the NBA? Did any of those guys step up?
Jamal Murray, remember him? Denver Nuggets star. Dude wore custom shoes with Breonna and George Floyd on them during the playoffs. Millions of people saw that.
Making a statement with every damn step.
And then there's the art world. Amy Sherald's portrait of Breonna.
I've seen that one.
It's hard-hitting, you know?
It really captures her spirit.
It's become an icon. That portrait was bought by the Smithsonian and the Speed Art Museum in Louisville.
No shit.
It's going to be there for a long time, man, keeping her memory alive.
That's dope. What about her family? Have they been doing anything?
They've been fighting hard, man. Started the Breonna Taylor Foundation to help families dealing with police violence.
It's got to be tough for them to keep reliving that pain.
They're turning their grief into action, though. They've also set up scholarships in Breonna's name to help young Black women get an education.
So even in death, she's still lifting people up.
That's the legacy. Breonna's story is about so much more than just her death. It's about a system that's fucked up, a community fighting back, and a movement demanding change.
Yeah, we've been through a lot in this deep dive, the raid, the legal bullshit, the protests, the tributes, but it all comes back to one thing. Breonna Taylor's life mattered.
And her death can't be in vain. We got to keep pushing for justice, keep saying her name, keep fighting for a world where this shit doesn't happen anymore.
We've laid it all out for you, sick fucks. Now it's up to you to keep the conversation going. Don't let Breonna's name fade away, keep fighting the good fight, and until next time, stay savage.